Hi guys, welcome back. In today's video, I thought I would share with you guys 4 beautiful decorative home decor items which I created using old crates. So stick around to see how it's done. So guys, to start off this project, first of all, you need to get yourself a palette. I got mine from my local hardware store. However, I've also seen these type of palettes lying around on the streets, so maybe you could grab them from there. Afterwards, I went ahead and put on my safety gear before I started cutting. Then, using my hand jigsaw, I decided to cut out all of this pallet wood. Now that I'm done cutting out all of my wood, I'm left with so many strips of wood that I'll be putting into good use. Afterwards, I took all of my wood and started marking them one by one into different projects before I started cutting them out. So guys, I thought I'd share with you a quick tip that works for me. When I'm doing multiple projects such as this, I always prefer to do all of my prep work at once rather than doing it in batches. This helps me keep my workspace neat and tidy. Now that I have marked all of my wood, now it's time to start cutting. But before I did so, I made sure I put on my safety gear. Afterwards, all I did was went ahead and cut all of my marked wood using my electric saw. It was that easy. Next, once I have cut out all of my wood to my desired length, it was time to give it a good sanding. Here I'm using my orbital sander to give these pieces of wood a good sanding. But at this stage, you could also sand these pieces of wood manually or even use any other type of sander you already got in hand. So now we are ready with our pieces of wood to start on our projects. So guys, to get started on our first project, I decided to make a tray out of our pallet wood. This is so simple and easy to put together. All you need is 4 strips of wood to the length you require. My length is around 40 centimeters. Next, all I did was lay my wood strips down on a flat surface side by side, and then using my Glorilla wood glue, I glued them down together. At this stage, you could use any type of wood glue you got in hand. Afterwards, I clamped all of my glued wood together and set it aside to dry. Now my tray base is dry and ready for its next step. So for this next step guys, you will need 2 wood strips cut to the width of your tray base. Afterwards, using my glue, I glued these wood strips onto the side of my tray base. Next, I placed some weights on it and set it aside to dry. Now my tray is all dry and ready for its next step. But before I started on my next step, I wanted to make sure my tray is sturdy. So I went ahead and turned it upside down and screwed in some screws to make it more sturdy. Now my tray is all secure and sturdy, and now it's time to go ahead and add some handles to it. So guys, I wanted to give this tray a bit of an industrial look, so I went ahead and chose 2 industrial looking handles from my local hardware store. But at this stage, you could use any type of handles you got in hand. Next, all I did was place my handles on my tray, measure it to the center of my tray, and screwed it in place. It was that easy. So guys, this is how my industrial looking tray out of pallet wood turned out. Hope you guys like it. Project number 2, so simple and easy to do key holder. So guys, to start off this project, you will need 3 strips of wood, one for the base of the key holder and the other 2 to form a shape of a house. Next, I went ahead and used my Gorilla wood glue and glued my 2 strips of wood together, which I cut in an angle to form the shape of a house. After I glued my 2 pieces of wood together, I clamped it and set it aside to dry. Couple of hours later, my wooden house is dry and ready for its next step. Afterwards, I went ahead and glued my wooden house using my Gorilla wood glue onto the base of my key holder. Next, I placed a weight on it and set it aside to dry. Once it was all dry, to make it more sturdy and secure, I went ahead and screwed in some nails onto the back of it to hold it in place. Afterwards, I used 2 picture hanging hooks which I've already got in hand that I screwed onto the back of my key holder. Next, I went ahead and screwed on 3 wrought iron hooks which I've already got in hand onto the base. These hooks are the ideal size to hang my keys or even a bag if I needed to. So guys, at this point my key holder is done. But I wanted to give this key holder a bit of a rustic look. So I decided to stencil a leaf pattern on. Stenciling is so simple and easy to do. All I did was take my stencil, placed it on, used my painter's tape to secure it in place, and then used my acrylic paint to paint on top of it. Afterwards, once it was all dried up, I gave it a bit of a sanding using an 80 grit sandpaper to give it a distressed look. So this is how my key holder turned out, guys. I'm so happy with how it turned out. Hope you guys like it too. Project number 3. Super simple and easy to do home sign. So guys, to start on this project, all you need is scrap wood cut into shapes of houses. Next, here I'm using stencils which I've already got in hand to spell out the word home. At this point guys, you could use any type of sayings you wish. I just chose to go with the word home. Next, I went ahead and used my painter's tape to secure the words on my shapes. Afterwards, I went ahead and used black acrylic paint to paint in my words. I repeated this process on all of my letters and set it aside to dry. Now my stenciling is dry and ready for its next step. Next, I took off all of my stenciling and using an 80 grit sandpaper, I gave it a slight sanding. I did this because I wanted to give this a bit of a distressed look. I repeated this sanding process on all of my letters, and once it was done, I used the old rag and wiped it down clean. Afterwards, I used my Gorilla wood glue and glued all of my shapes together and then clamped it and set it aside to dry. Now my home sign is dry and all ready, but I wanted to dress it up a bit, so I decided to use some jute twine and a wooden leaf which I already got in hand to give it a shabby chic look. So guys, all I did to dress this home sign was I wrapped a jute twine along one of the shapes and then tied it up into a bow together with my wooden leaf. So this is how my simple home sign turned out. Hope you guys like it. Project number 4. Simple and easy to do wall hanging. So for this next project, all you need is 3 strips of wood. One is for the base, the other is for the stand and support. Next, all you do is guys, go ahead and glue your stand and support wood onto your base using any type of wood glue. Afterwards, while it was drying, I decided to stencil in a leaf pattern onto the base. Here you see me using my painter's tape to secure my stencil in place. Next, I used black acrylic paint to stencil it in and then set it aside to dry. An hour or so later, once it was all dry, I took off my stencil and then using a 80 grit sandpaper, I gave it a slight sanding. Afterwards, I used an old rag and wiped it down clean. Next, I decided to screw in some nails at the back of my stand to make it more sturdy. Afterwards, I went ahead and screwed in a picture hanging hook on the top of my wall hanging for me to be able to hang it. So guys, my wall hanging is all done now, but I felt it was a little bit too plain, so I went ahead and wrapped some jute twine to give it a bit of a textured look. This is how my wall hanging turned out. Hope you guys like it.